What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about why I have decided to stop powering up Pokemon in Pokemon Go, or at least until something major changes. Now, you might be wondering, well, dude, how do you come up with a conclusion like that? And it has to do with the value of Pokemon in Pokemon Go, how much we value their performance, and then, of course, the Stardust and the candy costs associated to it. Because I'll be honest with you, I think that there is a major gap between wild Pokemon we can catch in the wild, versus something like raid lock Pokemon like legendaries. Let's go ahead and use an example. I personally think that Salamence is a great one for this. So we recently had a community day for Salamence, and yes, you would be able to get the move Outrage, right? Well, that puts Salamence in at the number 2 performance-wise for a dragon type attacker, only behind Rayquaza. But there is a major benefit that Salamence has that Rayquaza doesn't, and that is the fact that it can be caught in the wild at level 30 up to level 35. And what you can do is trade them now. You could wait until you get a high IV, get a lucky, or who knows, maybe even both. You can go ahead and evolve up to your Salamence, and you've got a high IV level 35 version of the second best dragon type attacker. And I can promise you a lot of people go, you know what? I'm good with that. This was amazing. I've got the candy for it. I've got no Stardust to have to really invest for it. It's already at level 35. I really don't have to power it up, and it's still going to be an amazing performer. At the same time, though, you also run into a Pokemon like Rayquaza. And best case scenario is that you could catch it at a weather boosted level 25, the most common one being level 20, but go ahead and check out the Stardust cost associated to it. For level 20, it would be 137,000 Stardust, 130 candy to get it up to level 35. If you are fortunate enough to get yourself a lucky version of it, the Stardust cost will be cut in half down to 68,500. And then, of course, for the best case scenario in at level 25, Stardust cost associated is 106,000 Stardust, 102 candy, and then secondarily down to 53,000 Stardust, 102 candy. Not gonna lie to you, 53,000 Stardust is really not that big of a deal, but you run into the secondary problem of the candy cost. These Pokemon are very expensive because the only way that you can really get the candy is one, either going out and raiding them, which of course, raid passes are not always free once you get past that, and then secondarily, using your rare candies and then putting them into that Pokemon. But we all know, it is much more difficult to power up a legendary Pokemon versus a wild Pokemon that you could just kind of leave at level 35 best case scenario. There's just a major gap between these two in Stardust cost, in candy cost, and not just literal candy cost, but the fact that it's kind of behind a paywall from a raid perspective. I personally think that there is a major gap, and we've really not even talked about the fact of research Pokemon being at level 15. Many people were very excited that legendary Pokemon got put into the research boxes, but that's really because they are not able to raid. They want that legendary Pokemon mostly for like a Pokédex entry, I guess, for the most part. But then you end up saying to yourself, would I ever power up a level 15 legendary Pokemon, even if it was the top performer, because of how much the cost would be for you to be able to get it up to a very good level? The cost is astronomical. There's just a major gap between these wild Pokemon that in some cases are even the best performers. For example, you've got Machamp. Machamp is number 1. You can catch it in the wild up to level 35. You can trade it. You have the best attacker of its type. There's no question about it. So that kind of like brings up at least my thought. I'm saying like, why would I ever power up any of these legendary Pokemon unless there is a major gap? So I'm sitting here saying like, I really don't know if I want to power up a Mewtwo. And then to make it worse, because of the nerf that they give it like a 9% nerf because it crossed over the 4,000 CP boundary. Mewtwo isn't going to necessarily be that good. And then you got a Pokemon like Gengar, right? It's a non-legendary Pokemon that can get fairly close in performance to Mewtwo. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, there's not a major performance gap, but there is a major cost gap. It would make more sense to try to trade a Gengar at level 35 than what it would for me to power up a Mewtwo. I don't know, I just think that there is a major gap. So as far as some solutions are concerned, I personally think that the raid levels made sense a long time ago. I think that one way to solve this would be to bump it up to level 25 and then up to level 30, so there's not that much of a cost difference between legendaries and then Pokemon that you can catch in the wild. Then on the flip side, we have another solution to this. When you get yourself a lucky Pokemon, the benefit is only related to the Stardust. You still have the candy as an issue. So even if you do manage to get yourself a lucky legendary Pokemon and you've got the Stardust for it, you're like, wait a minute, I don't have the candy for this. What am I supposed to do? And you end up with a couple of Pokemon that just kind of hang out, and it takes a very long time to build up to be able to power up that Pokemon just because of the candy cost. Then at the same time, you've got like a Salamence on a community day where you end up with 1,000+ candy. You could literally evolve 8 of them, and you're still going to be waiting to get yourself that 1 Rayquaza, that 2 Rayquaza, and you've got a full team of Salamances over here on the other side. I just think that there is a major gap, and I personally think that there will be at some point in time an update related to this. Of course, this just comes out of concern to me and just kind of like the value gap. You're gonna have people say like, dude, I'm going Rayquaza all the way, it performs better. Yes, go for it, but you know that there is a cost associated to it. At the same time, there's not as much of a cost associated to something like a Salamence. But anyways, I hope this does make sense. I definitely want to know what you think about it in the comment section below. Have you found yourself just saving up a bunch of Stardust and never really pulling the trigger on Pokemon because you're like, I just don't know if it's worth it? I know that I've been running into that a lot. I've already powered up a couple Pokemon, but I plan to go ahead and stop, of course, until at least something changes. But anyways, I definitely want to know what you think about this in the comment section below, and I will see you next time. I wanted to extend a huge thank you to the supporters over at Patreon. You definitely make this possible, and I 100% appreciate this support. If you are interested in supporting my channel on Patreon, definitely feel free to check out the link in the description.